Hello everyone, welcome back to Figure Out PM, the space where project management becomes less of jargons and more of clarity. Today we are unpacking something that every project manager has to do, no matter how smart you are, no matter how experienced you are, and that is risk management. Now think of this for a second. When you hear about risk, what comes to mind? People only think of problems, but there is more to risk than just problems. Yes, risk can cause delay, they can cause failures, they can cause delay in your deliverables and in the cost that you have prepared for your project. But there is also a positive aspect of it. That is the opportunities that are involved in the way you manage your risks. When you plan your risks effectively, when you manage them effectively, there is a high guarantee that you're going to get a very high positive feedback from it. As you know, this is Figure Out PM, where we break down the method of project management into something you can actually use. My name is Valeri, and if you are joining us for the first time, welcome here. Let's figure out this together. Now, let's understand risks in project management terms. In project management terms, risk refers to the uncertainties that affect your project's objective. Now, think of this: when they say something is certain, that is not a risk, it is a fact. And here is the kickoff: not all risks are bad. So, the next time you think of a risk, don't just think about the disasters that can happen in your project. You also think about the positive and the negative parts of it. Your role as a project manager is to ensure that you prepare for the risks and not ignore them. The fact that you are ignoring your risks doesn't make it less likely to occur. It makes you unprepared. And when a risk comes to you at a surprise, your team is going to face that challenge and your team is going to experience burnout. So you need to make sure that as a project manager, you prepare for your risks, the uncertainties. A project without risk management is like driving a car without brakes. Yes, you might move forward for a while, but when something happens unexpected, everything crashes. When you're managing your risks, you are protecting these three things: your time, you are shifting the team from unnecessary delays, your budget, those hidden costs, those unnecessary expenditures, you're keeping them away. Quality, you're ensuring that you deliver what work on time within the project and within the scope of your project. Imagine this: when you walk up to a stakeholder and shows that these are the risks that we have been able to identify in the project, these are the risks that might prevent us from achieving our goals, our objective, and these are the response that we are going to use to mitigate all these risks. This shows that as a project manager, you are not just reacting, but you're being proactive, and it builds confidence, it builds trust in your project team. There are a few simple ways that you can use to identify your risks in your project team. The first one is brainstorm with your team. Open that conversation with your team by asking them, what do you think? Ask them what could go wrong in the project, what could go right in this project. When you open that space, there are opinions that are going to come from different directions. And when you collaborate with others, you're going to identify your risks. The second one is use a series of checklists. There are risks that have been occurring in that particular project that you're working on. So you just need to identify the most frequently occurred ones and highlight the ones that might affect your project. Then come up with mitigation plans for it. The third one is looking at the previous projects that you have and then identifying the risks that occurred in that project which you are currently working on and seeing how you can mitigate them. Here is the most important thing that you have to know: identifying the risks doesn't mean that you're predicting what could happen in the future exactly. It just means that you are listing out the list of possibilities and making sure that you don't lead your project blindly. Risk identification is something that takes time, it takes energy, and it requires collaboration with your team members. So you need to be very strategic as a project manager in identifying your risks. That is what could go wrong, what could go right. It's about the threats and it's also about the opportunities that can come in your project. Okay, now that we have identified our risks, what happens now? You need to understand that not all risks are the same in your project. There are ones that are big, there are ones that are small, there are risks that are very scary, and there are some that are almost certain. So you need to make sure that you do the risk analysis, and it comes in two different flavors. We have the quantitative analysis and we have the qualitative analysis. Now, when we're talking about the qualitative analysis, we're talking about what is the likelihood of it happening and what impact can it have, how big is the impact. When you are able to identify the risks using the qualitative analysis, we then go in and categorize it based on high, medium, or low. Now, when we go into quantitative analysis, we're talking about numbers here. We're talking about the percentages. We can even go ahead and run simulations for that project. In quantitative analysis, it is good for bigger projects. You run simulation and you have a better understanding of the likelihood of your risk happening. Note that your risk analysis helps you to prioritize your risks. It helps you to prioritize which one is likely going to occur, which one matters at the moment. That is when quantitative and qualitative analysis for your risk comes in. Now that you have prioritized your risks, the next question is, what do you do? Now, we have four things that you have to do, both for the positive and the negative risks. For the negative risks, the first thing you need to do is avoid it. Now, you can change the plan that you have for your project to make sure that that risk doesn't occur. If you have a greater risk that can damage your whole project, then you need to avoid it and come up with a better plan. The second thing is you have to do is mitigate. You mitigate the risk, that is reducing the likelihood of that risk occurring. The third thing you can do is transfer the risk. You can do this through insurance, you can do this through a contract. You just want to make sure that your project is safe and your project team is safe as well. The fourth thing you can do is accept the risks, right? The risk is going to occur. So when you look at the positive impact that it can have and the negative one, you do the comparison and then you accept the risk. If the positive aspect of that risk occurring is greater, then you accept the risk. Now, when we go to the positive part of what you should do with your risk, the first thing you need to do is explore. You make sure that that risk happens. If it is going to benefit your team, then you ensure that it happens. The second thing is enhance. Make sure that the likelihood of that risk occurring is very high up there. The third thing is share with your team. Let them explore it, let them understand it, let them see the benefits of that risk in your team. And lastly, you need to enjoy. You need to make sure that you work with peace in that particular risk. Everyone sees the benefit. Note that the most important thing is for you to plan your mitigation plans. You need to plan your risks. Don't wait until it occurs, then you start figuring out the ways in which you can manage your risks. The most important thing is planning. Risk planning is very important. Okay, we have identified our risks, we have analyzed them, we have planned them. Is that all? Not quite. We have to go ahead and monitor and control our risks. Risks evolve, the old ones are going to fade, new ones are going to come. As a project manager, you need to monitor your risks and control them. That is where the risk register comes in. It is a live document where you have all your risks highlighted, the risk owners, the mitigation plan, and the risk ID. You need to make sure that this document is always with you so that you see which one is going out, which one is coming in. You put an eye on a trigger when your risk is trying to affect your project and you come with a mitigation plan. The next thing you want to do is constantly communicate. Update your team about the risk that is happening in the team and how it is affecting the team. And when a risk starts affecting the team, it becomes an issue, which is something that you need to solve before you proceed with your project. Constantly communicate that with your team members. I'm sure at this point you have an understanding of what risk management is. As earlier said, risk refers to the uncertainties that affect your project objective. So what does risk management mean to you? It means that you identify your risks, you analyze your risks and prioritize them, you provide response plans to them, and then you monitor and control your risks. Doing this as a project manager, the likelihood of your project being a successful one is very high. Then your project is going to be a very successful project if you plan your risks well, if you analyze them well, if you prioritize them, you make sure that you provide deep responses, monitor your risks, make sure you update your team about what is going on. You are going to make up with your project. If you have watched up to this point, what keeps us moving is the people who give us feedback, those who have subscribed, because we have noticed that a lot of people don't know that they are not subscribed yet to our channel. If you are that person, please do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. And my promise to you, alongside with my team, is to consistently bring you real, honest, and valuable content that helps you figure out project management one conversation at a time. Thank you for being here.